enjoy my time off, maybe go
All
go
right.
exercise
Okay, I'm
more
glad.
and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
some kind of balance. Well,
Exactly.
there's a few others that joined us, and it's 12 o'clock. So I guess we can get this party started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Breaking into Tech Community AMA. We have TechRally, aka Alex, as our guest speaker. Just a little bit about Alex. He's a front-end engineer at Amazon, based in New York City. Alex took a non-traditional route of learning how to code by attending a boot camp. Prior to the coding boot camp, Alex worked in the semiconductor manufacturing industry. And although that was a very safe job, he knew that wasn't for him. And then he made his hobby into a career. So with that being said, we now have 10 attendees on this Twitch stream. The first question is, if we can get into it, what
Yeah,
was the eureka moment in which you wanted to make this hobby into a career?
that's a really good question. And it probably stemmed from my realization that I didn't want to do my job anymore and my semiconductor job. And I was actually just trying to figure out what it is that made me happy in terms of a career, right? When I
Mm-hmm.
graduated from college, I think it was just so easy for me to just go to a job that gave me money and then save enough money, hopefully hit like 100K, buy a house, start a family, and then that's my life. But at the same time, working for 2.5, 3 years in the semiconductor industry, I kind of like looked ahead and and I saw what my future could have been if I just stayed in that industry by looking at the senior engineers, the senior managers, and I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do. So I actually didn't know what I wanted, and I even took the LSAT because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and
Okay.
that didn't go very well in terms of just my score. So in some ways that was already decided for me. And then somehow I just stumbled on a YouTube video, started doing a bunch of Android programming tutorials, and it was just so much fun. So much fun to just see whatever you write on your keyboard and then it comes to life on the application. And at that point, it just started evolving into something a little bit more and more. And then my curiosity just got the best of me. But unfortunately, my job also required me to work like 10, 12 hours a day. And also, I had to be on call every day. So it just really wasn't a good way to try to learn part time. And I just knew I was going to get burnt out. And this wasn't my first rodeo in terms of trying to do
Mm-hmm.
something on the side
Mm-hmm.
while I was trying to do the LSAT stuff. So I said, you know what? I'm going to save as much money as I can for the next like 3.5, 4 months. Some people have told me about like coding boot camps, and that's when coding boot camps was still in its infancy, in my opinion, back in
Mm-hmm.
2015. And eventually, after just talking to a lot of other people in that area, so I was living in Austin at the time. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how did you get your new job as a software engineer? And they said, I went to a coding boot camp. And one of them actually recommended a coding boot camp in New York City. And I was like, cool, I've always wanted to live in New York City. So why not kill two birds with one stone? And so I just decided, hey, let's just move to New York. And then I moved to New York and then started my coding journey there.
Oh my goodness. That's really great. Yeah, I feel like it's just all like a domino effect of,
Mm-hmm.
your hobby and just figuring out how you want your next steps to be. So with that, you actually answered a couple of questions already. One other question from the Pathlight community would be, why did you move to New York specifically for that boot camp? Was it only available for New York? Well, no, sorry. Was it only available in New York?
Yeah, so it was only available in New York, and there were a few options. Either I could stay in Austin and take a coding boot camp there, or I could move to New York or California. And for some reason or another, something attracted me to New York, and maybe it was just on my bucket list of places to try living in. And I heard a lot of great things about the boot camp as well. So I just thought, hey, I get to check something off my bucket list. I'm only gonna stay for a couple months, and then I could just go back to California and then just start my life as a software engineer. And I didn't really think too much about it. I knew I just wanted to leave Austin at that time and was ready to just move on to that next chapter of my life. I wish it was more well planned, or just thought like I did so much research and all of that. But it was a mixture of just my own desire to leave Texas, as well as my strong desire to also live in New York. So it just kind of worked out very nicely.
Yeah, everything all worked out, killing two birds with one stone.
Mhm.
Okay, so with that, what was your first role after boot camp? Um, and what was the process of finding that role?
Yeah, I don't really talk about this part of my journey too much. I just kind of go straight into my full-time job, but I did actually intern at Major League Gaming for about a month and a half to 2 months after my coding boot camp. And that experience was not the most ideal experience that I would, like I wish upon anybody, but at the same time, it did give me some kind of experience around working with teams, working with people as a software intern. But luckily, what happened was I was able to land a full time job about a month and a half or 2 months afterwards, because um, funny enough, like my friend that did the coding bootcamp with me, we were competing for the same role at the full-time job, and he got the job and I didn't. But I think they
Oh,
were
I see.
always, yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
super happy for him, obviously. Smart dude. But at the same time, there was only one role but two people, and
Mm-hmm.
luckily that a role opened up afterwards, about a month later, and I didn't have to interview because I already interviewed before. And then I got the full-time gig, and it was at an agency, and I worked there for about 8 months doing a lot of different types of projects: CSS, HTML, JavaScript, like C Sharp, Ruby, like a bunch of different things. Because when you work at an agency, you're kind of just working with many different types of clients and working on many
Mm-hmm.
different types of projects. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the hardest one out of all those technologies to learn?
Probably JavaScript, to be frankly honest, because I went to a coding boot camp that focused 100% on Rails. And well, I lied, maybe like 95% on Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And then the
Mm-hmm.
5% was on like JavaScript. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just really difficult to do some of the front end stuff because I wasn't used to it. And as much as the bootcamp taught me, there was still so much I didn't know. So
Right.
it was a little difficult to just like wrap my hand around all the new languages, all the new like format, and just how stand up works. Everything was new. So just the mixture of being unfamiliar with just the whole like tech stand up and all that daily grind, plus the new technologies made it kind of difficult. But what made it easy was that there was also a Ruby on Rails project that
Mm-hmm.
apparently a lot of new people that joined the team would start on, because they would hire a lot of uh, coding bootcamp students from my school. So it was just kind of like a good transition to get started there, and then eventually kind of spread your wings and try different things.
Right, right. So you mentioned that your coding boot can specifically focus on Ruby on Rails, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that being said, and then you kind of had some struggle with JavaScript. Since a boot camp is usually, intense, a very short time, and sometimes very expensive, would you recommend a boot camp to other juniors trying to break into tech?
I actually made a tweet about this yesterday, about just committing to a boot camp and all of that. It's really hard to give a clear yes or no answer. I think everybody has their own different learning style, as well as, do you have the time and commitment to give up 3 to possibly 6 months of your life to pursue something that isn't a guarantee either, right? You're
Right,
investing a lot of money into a program, and even now it's even harder because most programs are online. When I went to a coding boot camp, it was a full-time immersive. You have to be at the campus, so they say like every day you're learning, and then you're putting extra hours in. So it really is dependent on the person. Like, can they sacrifice and give up a portion of their time to commit to this? And if not, then maybe you shouldn't do a coding boot camp, and you need to do more of a self-paced learning, where it's going to take a little bit longer or a lot longer, depending on how much you work. But overall, like, you have to understand that it's going to be such an emotional drain, a physical drain, and even a financial drain. Like, even those free coding boot camps that say, you don't have to pay until later, you have to think about it from the perspective of you're also not working either. So depending
Right.
on how long this boot camp is, that's possibly 3 to 6 months of credit card debts that you have to think about. And all of these things you have to take into consideration before saying like, hey, can I commit to this, right? So I would suggest people to do their research not only the boot camp, but your own finances, right? Your own can you survive 6 months? If not, then maybe it's not a good idea. So there are a lot of elements to this, as well as even instruction. Like, do you know who your teachers are going to be? Do you know what the alumni have said so far? Like, what is the actual graduation rate? Like, now companies are, or boot camps are willing to show their graduation rates, but don't like always believe the sticker value. You have to kind of like dig in deeper and talk to see like who did they omit, who did they add, and all of those things. But overall, I would say it's kind of like a stock market, right? In a sense, like, you invest your money into it. Sometimes it'll go up, sometimes it'll go down. But the main difference that I see between you investing in yourself versus you investing in the stock market, it's like it really is what you put in, assuming that the boot camp is good. That is, of course, yeah.
Right. Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
A
It is really hard.
long-winded way of saying it depends.
Okay. TLDR, guys. It depends. Do your own research.
Mhm.
With that being said, it definitely seemed like the bootcamp experience has helped you out, paved your way. Did it help you maybe land your current role now at Amazon? And then also, I guess another question would be with that, how was that transition to getting from your first job and then to Amazon?
Yeah. So if you ask me, could I have gotten a job at Amazon after my boot camp? No, definitely not, because my skill sets weren't there. Like, the boot camp was just enough for me to make some type of like meaningful contribution, but at the same time, I will probably be doing majority learning and hopefully contributing kind of thing. And did the boot camp helped me personally, just because I needed that dedicated time to just really jump in and go all out into it. And for me, I was looking at it from the perspective of just time, right? Like, if I did grad school or any other type of formal education, it was going to cost me maybe like $20,000 to $25,000 a year over 2 years. That's like 50 grand. But more than the money, it was actually the time that I was more concerned about, because I wasn't old necessarily, but spending 2 years of not working and then again racking up credit card debts and just kind of living off of my parents in some way, shape, or form, I'm sure that's not something I wanted to do. And what if I didn't like it at the same time? Like, what if I spent 2 years doing something and I didn't actually enjoy coding? Because I didn't know fully if I wanted to do it still. But I saw the coding bootcamp as just like an opportunity to say, hey, look, 3 months, $12,000. It sucks that I'll lose the money, but if I don't like it, but at the same time, I only spent 3 months on it, right? And then I could move on to something else. So that's why the bootcamp helped me just get to a position where I could actually find a job. But once I found a job, I knew that, like Facebook, Amazon, all those big companies, I probably didn't have the skill sets yet. So that's why it took me about almost 6 years of coding to eventually have the confidence to apply to a FANG company. And that's when when I was trying to look for my third role, actually, did I join Amazon. But even before then, I still felt a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, can I actually work there? Like, I don't have a computer science degree. Like, I did go to college for like a mechanical engineering degree, but they're like very different in so many different ways. But yeah, like, it definitely got me started, but I wouldn't say the boot camp stuck around for all 6 years of my career development. It's like it's my own self-taught studying that contributed to where I am at Amazon.
Right, right. And that's great. That's really great. I'm sure a lot of people are tuning in or follow you or watch your content because
Yeah.
they just want to learn all about um, yourself and how you got to where you are right now. Um, so let's see. You're so sorry. I'm just getting through my questions here. Um, so with that said, you did talk about imposter syndrome at Amazon. What was the interview process like? Like, was it how many technical interviews, how many behavioral interviews, and were there any like certain sources that you use to study um, for the technical interviews?
Yeah, I can't like divulge too much information just because I
Right,
don't want to
right,
get fired. But
right. Whatever you can.
yeah, just generally it's like a phone screen with a recruiter first, and then there's gonna be a technical phone screen afterwards if everything works out with the recruiter. And then if that goes well, then you do a on-site. And generally, I think it's like 5 or 6 rounds, depending on what level you're interviewing for. And that's a mixture of like technical interviews as well as leadership principle questions. And if in Amazon we fall, there's this whole concept of leadership principles where you have to reflect, or you as an individual have to reflect these leadership principles like customer obsession and all of these other things like diving deep. But you have to essentially kind of find stories in your career that can reflect that. And that's something that you can talk about during the interview process. And I think it's pretty public that if you probably want to put them in like a star format where you describe like a situation, you describe the task that was given to you or that you assigned yourself, and you explain your actions of how you did it. And then the result is like what was the result of the stuff that you did. So that was kind of the process. It took about like 2.5 months, especially because I think that was during Christmas holidays. So it bled over to the following year, and then yeah, luckily, everything went well. I was a little stressed, not gonna lie. And when I got the call and they said yes, it was a really good experience. Yeah.
You made it, yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Um, so with that, with that question, you are a full-time front-end engineer at Amazon. How did you get into content creation?
Yeah, so content creation is so interesting to me, especially for me because I'm not a huge, or I thought I wasn't a huge online presence kind of guy. But funny enough, now people see me, they're like, "Oh wow, like TechRally the brand, or TechRally, I see you here, I see you there, and everything." And if you asked me that like 4 or 5 years ago, like I really didn't have any social media presence, and I didn't know what like hashtags or any of that was. But I think there was just a part of me that always was fearful of showing my face in front of a camera. And I wanted to figure out how do I, again, like just cross off this thing on my bucket list of like, hey, let's just try this out and see what happens. And I think I was a little still nervous about what to do. And I said, hey, let's start a YouTube channel. I'll show my face, but just do it in my own like comfort zone, which was talking about code and doing like tutorials. So if you watch any of my first videos, it's all just tutorials. It's really bland, it's really dry, but it's something that I just checked off and said, cool, I did it. And after I did it, I didn't think too much about it, about my YouTube channel at all. Like I didn't work on it very hard. It was just something that on my bucket list that I wanted to do, and then just think of, and then find some other like rush kind of thing. But eventually, that fear became comfortability, and then I wanted to try something, another thing that made me scared, which was like talking in front of a camera and then posting about it. And then I did that, and then people started resonating with it, which made me realize, hey, like I went through a pretty non-traditional way to get into software development. And I feel like I know a lot about how to get a job. And if I could just share some insight, then why not make this kind of type of content? It's like it's not necessarily the most entertaining or anything, but the people that do subscribe now are people that actually want to break into the tech industry, which I absolutely love. And I want to say like my channel is like the most entertaining channel as a content creator, but I love the fact that like I was able to evolve what was like just a fear of showing my face into a camera to what it is now. And yeah, like I don't even know if I still consider myself a content creator because I still feel like more of a software engineer, but maybe I'm a little bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no crime in being
Yeah.
multidimensional at all. Yeah, I mean, it lists us right here that you're a content engineer right here, and she's
Shout
inspired,
out
and
to
I'm
Liz.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of others are inspired as well. I know Steve from the Pathlight community took your portfolio course, and
Hmm.
he also told me he learned so much from it, like especially about Git. And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, his question is, what inspired you to help? I mean, you told us that you want to help others create content and learn how to break into tech, but what inspired you to make the portfolio course, and what motivated you?
Yeah. I have a pretty like no nonsense approach to software development kind of thing. In a sense, like even with my one-on-one coaching, I'm very intentional about what I want to get out of this conversation, which is to try to help the other person. And like you and I, we've done our like little one-on-ones together, and it was very, I wouldn't say it was the most like personal conversation, like, oh, how are you doing? Blah blah. It was like straight to business kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because like if that helps you get your job faster, then my job is done. So in that same way, like I didn't want to make a course about, I don't know, like Dino JS or just some random weird framework that's out there, because now that I have a kind of an influence on Twitter and kind of an influence on YouTube, like a part of me feels like I'm be doing you a disservice or the community a disservice if I built like a course on some weird framework that no one really uses, and if anything, it's just more of a distraction um, than a benefit. And the thing about a portfolio is that all new developers need a portfolio because it's the only way to show future employers that, hey, I'm a software engineer. And a lot of the stuff that I do is very intentional. And the whole intention behind what I do is to help software developers land their first job. So a lot of that just, I mean, once in a while, I'll make content just for fun or whatever. But ideally, my goal of why I do what I do is the same reason: help developers find jobs. And that's why I built the portfolio course, is because, look, if you don't have a portfolio and you're like going all of this like crazy training or tutorial hell of like using React to build this or something to build that, but you don't really have anything of substance to show, then you're definitely doing something wrong, right? And that's why I wanted some, like, if you already have a portfolio, perfect. But if you don't and you just don't know how to start, just take this course and you'll have one. Like, just, and it's not the most prettiest portfolio. It's not the most like, oh my God, like this is the best portfolio in the world. I just want to give people that are trying to like I just want to give people a chance to just showcase their skills. And I just felt that it didn't really exist, like it didn't really exist for someone to be like, oh, like how do I start and build a portfolio? And since I couldn't like forward a course to the people I was working with, I just said, hey, let's just build it myself and
Mm-hmm.
see what happens, right? And a lot of people definitely gave me positive feedback. And in some ways, like I'm glad that it didn't like blow up, because people that are using it, they'll still have like the customized portfolio for themselves. But yeah, like it's such an interesting thing, because like as course creators, like I don't think I consider myself a course creator, because I actually don't like building courses. I only did it because of the intention, right? Of what my goal is
Yeah,
to help
helping
software, is
people.
help exactly. So like I said again, like who knows when my second course will be built, but if I see something that's lacking out there, that and I don't see like a resource that I can point to, then I might consider making it again. But yeah, like generally that's just how I operate. Full time My full-time job keeps me pretty busy enough. Like I don't really do it unless there's that true intention behind it. Yeah.
Right. And the portfolio course is really easy to follow, guys. It's very affordable, $20. And just plugging in Alex's portfolio course here, easy to follow. And gets you started with just showing your work. Like you mentioned, it doesn't need to be really fancy, just enough to show your actual projects. because I
Right.
also bought it after we had spoken.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it was really great, and yeah,
I
a lot of feedback too.
I need to do a better job promoting it, probably. But it is what
It's
it is.
okay. Yeah, that's my job right now today.
Appreciate it.
Anyway, it seems like you're always getting out of your comfort zone, and with self-learning, content creation, I don't know, maybe other things that I don't know about, like I don't know, finding the best Korean barbecue place. Um, how do you focus and like what to learn? Do you have a schedule? Do you have a certain routine, a system that other junior devs could hopefully follow to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think, well, I know if you're a new developer, I mean, content creation is cool, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend it until you get your bearings as a software engineer. Personally, just I started a YouTube channel when I felt comfortable coding for a pretty long time, and I say like comfortable is in like I could be given a task to do and I'll do it within a certain time frame and feel pretty good about myself. But if you have to ask yourself why are you doing what you're doing, right? And if your goal is to become a software engineer, then focus on that first, and then when you have the breathing room to kind of explore other things, then that's when you should like start like thinking about content creation and all of that stuff. I think too often people they try to jump to content creation before they actually know how to uh, be comfortable as a software engineer, and then that's when things start getting blurry and it gets really difficult for you to excel in one or the other. You got to give yourself room to really like get better at your craft. So I would say for a lot of new developers, just focus on your first couple of years, just like really getting good at being a software developer. And like maybe if you want to do content creation, you could kind of do more of like a tutorial based style or like live streaming on Twitch to like kind of show that you're writing code. But I don't want to necessarily like gatekeep people from doing what they want to do. And if they love sharing their thoughts and feelings, then definitely go ahead. But it's like it's all about time balance and priority, right? Like you don't want to burn yourself out. And I've burned myself out plenty of times throughout this journey. But overall, in terms of just like a day to day of how I manage things, I have like monthly goals, I have yearly goals. And then I always look at that to remind myself what I need to do. But then I also have like a weekly to do list. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I have like a list of things. And I actually have a template every week that I reset on Sunday. And it's like the necessities of things I need to do, like I don't know, research a front end eval problem, or uh, talk to certain people, like post on a Tuesday for my YouTube video that I just did today. Like all of these things are little things I check off. Go to the gym for my personal stuff, but outside of the original template, I do add other things in there if specific for that week, like do my taxes or I don't know, one-on-one coaching, like talk to Mia or something. Like I'll sprinkle those things in throughout the week, but there are like general things that I have to do every week that's always part of it, and that's definitely kept my routine in set. Yeah, that's definitely kept my routine like consistent. So it's all about consistency and just making sure like you just do what you have to do. Yeah.
Right. Lorraine on Twitch just said that you just reminded her that she has to do her taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
That's I hate taxes, but that's another story.
yeah, this is just adulting, guys.
Adult stuff.
So yeah, with your experiences in managing all of these things, how do you deal with burnout and how do you try to prevent it?
Yeah, I think you just gotta self-identify a bit that you are burnt out. And maybe this month I will realize how burnt out I was because I'm not gonna be doing as much new content creation. Like everything is already queued up and I'm gonna be able to relax. But I will always wonder if I'm relaxing so much, do I get really nervous? Maybe I'm just used to my life being in a burnt out state, right? And I don't think that's healthy either. So I'm just gonna really, at least this month, embrace the slowness a bit more and maybe just more focused on work full time. And I'm not saying that I don't work like a full 8 hours kind of thing. It's more about just doing more like focus learning, right? And And that's kind of what I'm hoping I'll be able to accomplish, but we'll see. But to avoid burnout, I would say learn how to say no to things. Learn how to say no to new like projects or new endeavors, or like I was actually really contemplating not doing a podcast because of burnout. But then I realized, hey, if I just do this every other week versus every week, like I tried to do last time, maybe I won't be burnt out. And it's actually made my life so much more comfortable knowing that, hey, I don't have to do this every week. So that means I don't have to interview guests so frequently. And I could just kind of do it at my own pace, at my own time. So just learning how to say no is really important. Yeah.
Right. That I feel like learning how to say no is a skill in itself, because sometimes people can find it difficult to say no to other people or other opportunities, that they may not have the bandwidth to do so.
Yeah, and
With
one thing I
that,
just want to, sorry, I just want to emphasize one thing too is like I talk about this a lot, and this is like the most important thing to me is time. You're like time is the only asset that you can never get back, right? You could make more money, and you could like put use that to make more and more and more money, but like you can never get back your time, right? So you have to be very, very like wise with it. And that's why I say, like if you're gonna get burnt out because you put so much effort up front, like you're gonna be missing out on all this other future time because you just didn't allocate your time properly, right? So I just want to make sure that like learning how to say no will save you more time in the future, I think.
right, definitely. To anyone listening, please just try to enforce some healthy boundaries with
Mm-hmm.
coding and with
Mm-hmm.
personal life. Everyone on the chat is saying that yes, time is very precious and learn how to say no, etc. Um, so I guess there's a lot of people on Twitter that are doing 100 devs and trying to network currently. Throughout your career journey, did you emphasize on networking and coffee chats?
Yeah, I think it was a little different during my time because I was coming from a coding boot camp. I don't think Twitter was as popular with the whole like networking aspects of it. So I just personally for me, I didn't do too much networking, and I didn't really talk to other developers online until I started my YouTube channel. So my journey was not quite the whole like, oh, like meet people on Twitter and like there are developers, so let's connect and all of that stuff. If anything, I'm experiencing this influx of developer interactions now more than ever.
I
And
see.
it's been an interesting ride, especially as more of a quote unquote like experienced engineer. I think coffee chats are really important, are good, and I think it's good to reach out and get just like I don't know, get to know people and everything. But I also have a really strong opinion that if you're doing like a 15-minute coffee chat, like you should really go in there with a pretty strong intention of what you want to get out of it. I like it's especially coming from the opposite side of like getting requests for coffee chats. I would say, when you do these coffee chats, like at least personally for me, because maybe it's because I'm also like a coach, like a one-on-one career coach or software developer coach. Like I don't really want to talk about myself. I want to like go in there and like help you, right? But and someone actually from 100 devs did a coffee chat with me, and I love her so much, super nice. But she asked me questions that you could kind of see on my YouTube channel, right? And I'm not saying that everyone's gonna have a YouTube channel, but if like you have to kind of know who you're talking to, and then that way, at least if you have a set of questions that could help you, then try to ask those type of questions, because I think a lot of times developers do love talking about themselves, but I think they also love helping other people. So like 15 minutes is short, try to maximize it, try to optimize it for your career as well. And then that could, I feel like that could lead to better conversations. Because I think sometimes you can only get so much out of 15 minutes or 10 minutes. You probably want to figure out how to maximize that conversation as much as possible. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Totally understandable. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned earlier, time is really precious, and just try to utilize that as best as possible.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So So what would be your future plans with your career and then maybe with TechRally?
Right. So this year, I mean, obviously just get better at my craft. And that's probably why I moved companies last year, is just to get better as a front end engineer. So that's always my like North Star goal, always just get better in software development. In terms of TechRally, I think this year I really want to focus on sharing other people's stories through my podcast. And then secondly, actually give tangible content that could help them land a job. So that's kind of why I've been working on front end eval with like Mike and James. I actually wasn't part of front end eval when they first started it, but when I saw that, when I saw what it was and what it could be, I feel like this would be such a benefit for the community, because this is like actual advice. It's not like, and nothing against going on Twitter spaces and giving like these kind of advices, but sometimes it's the boring stuff that will get you the job, right? It's the boring stuff of
Right.
having to grind, having to do the work. And if I actually show that, hey, I'm doing the work with you through my YouTube channel, and I don't have to answer these questions, or like I don't have to do these like problems, but I'm doing it because I want to help someone get to that next level. And again, this goes back to the whole like intention thing of like helping developers find jobs. Like I feel like what front end eval is doing is perfect for what my main goal is, as well as the outside the code. That's just more of like my personal pet project of just really getting to know these developers or program PMs or directors, or who knows who will be on the guest, but get to know them more on a deeper level outside of what just kind of exists face value on their like Twitter profile, right? And that's
Right.
why with these guests, I'm very intentional about who I invite, because I don't want to necessarily invite someone that I don't really know well and then just ask them pretty general, generic questions. And it's not a very fun podcast to listen to at that point. So that's where I'm kind of putting my like energy into, is the podcast and then the front end eval stuff.
Right. That's all very great. And you're doing your best to utilize your time too in helping out the community. Um, so I guess with that, a lot, just more questions. So sorry that I'm trying to spring up my brain here. Sorry, guys. My
No,
first
keep
time
them coming.
streaming. Yeah. What's one thing, if there was a universal advice that you could give, like a 1 or 2 sentence universal advice you would give a junior developer, what would it be? Because
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of advice out there on Twitter, on Reddit, many platforms. If Alex could, help someone's day or week just a little bit as a junior developer, what would you tell the masses?
Stick with a single language, or at max two. So imagine, I guess it has to be JavaScript for front end, but if you want to use JavaScript in the back end, that's the one language. Or if you want to use a different language like Python or Ruby or whatever, use that as the back end. So don't deviate outside of that. Just stick with that first. Really optimize your LinkedIn. Watch like Danny Thompson's videos or something for that. Get a portfolio website. Have at least one good project. Like don't make like 10 crappy projects, just make one really good project. And then fix your resume. I'm like 6. Try to find like a mentor or someone with experience that understands what the junior developer journey is like, if you can. I mean, if you can't, that's fine, but at least try to get some feedback behind like your project and portfolio and everything. So this is kind of like the rest. And then network, right? Networking is really important. So there's like 8 things. It's a lot
eight,
of things. And like,
eight things, guys.
yeah, 8 things. And like Mia, when we had our one-on-one conversation, we were going like all over the place, but it's just,
Yeah.
there's just so much to cover. But I would say try not to get distracted outside of those 8 things. Like, don't try to be a social media influencer. Don't try to be like some like I know like Twitter, it's like a love hate for me, because I love that I'm like interacting with real people, and you get connected with other developers as well, but sometimes you start losing why you joined Twitter in the first place, right? Sometimes, like especially for newer developers, right? Because they join Twitter to meet other software developers, do the networking, but they never translate that networking into like, okay, now I actually have to code. And after I code, I can show the experienced developers what I've done so far, get the feedback. Like that, so for some, that gets lost in translation. And they just start just using it as a networking tool or try to become this like influencer that talks about tech but hasn't really been in the tech industry. Like it just, that's another problem with even YouTube, right? Like you just become so, if you get really popular on YouTube in the beginning of your software developer journey, like you code less and you edit more videos. So I would try to just eliminate as many like distractions and just remember your why. Like remember why you're doing this, remember why you're doing this. And if you feel like it's distracting you from your true like goal in the first place, then take it out. Just yeah, and just stick with what you like, what you can do. And that's why I actually love your story, Mia. It's like you did do the networking on Twitter and everything, but you also went above and beyond, and now you did like hackathons and you formed a team. Like you actually code. Like that's the most important part. Just code, right? Like that's if you don't actually code, then you're using like Twitter incorrectly, in my opinion.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I joined the hackathon team through Join Pathlight because I saw Lizzie comment on one of Shashi's tweets. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna follow her. And then she saw that she posted something about a hackathon. I'm like, I need to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was just a domino effect of relationships.
Yeah, everything that has been good for me in the long run has always been hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like hackathons
Right.
aren't easy. You actually having to
No.
code is not easy, but those hard parts is what actually makes the biggest difference, in my opinion. Like writing a tweet is not hard. Like,
Right. There's just like a lot of glamorous things that
mhm,
people can portray about themselves on Twitter, YouTube, any social media platform. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of mundane things that we all kind of have
right.
to do to get to that final destination. Well,
Ex-
of the next job or next challenge. And
exactly.
um, I guess with the final destination, I know we're almost done here, like a few more minutes. When when a junior developer overcomes a certain language, be it like JavaScript, Python, etc., what do you think? How can they utilize that to make a good portfolio project? Shashi here asked, when after you talked about portfolios on your top 8 list, how does one know what to do with the tools that they have, and how can they convey themselves to be a legitimate developer?
Yeah, maybe I won't really talk about what is a good portfolio project, but maybe I could just give you like a comparison, right?
Sure.
JavaScript and Python or just backend, all those things. Like imagine if you're building, I don't know, like a table, right? Like in my opinion, JavaScript and all of these things, they're just tools, like a hammer, a screwdriver, like and like all this other stuff. And you could make a table in so many different ways, right? Like, but until you do it yourself, you're never really gonna be considered, I guess. I don't know. What do you call people that build tables? Like, yeah,
Carpenter?
yeah,
Carpenter?
carpenter
Uh-huh.
maybe. Yeah, like if you're a carpenter, you're using the tools to build what you need to build, right? And just like a developer, you could watch someone do it, but until you actually do it yourself, you're never really gonna be a developer because all you're doing is just like watching someone do it. Like a person's actually going to get their hands like dirty and then actually build that table. And just like a developer, you have to get your fingers moving. You have to make the mistakes to build out that portfolio project, right? And maybe the table, it serves a purpose, right? It serves a purpose in a sense that you're putting stuff on top of it, so you could, I don't know, write code or like write something on a piece of paper. But like just like your portfolio project, it needs to serve a purpose. In some when I think for your hackathon, you're building some like restaurant type of application. and it was serving a purpose. If you build like a bug tracker, it serves a purpose. Like try to build projects with a purpose, but use the tools that you have to do it, right? Like don't copy and watch someone else's tutorials. I mean, maybe you could use that to get inspiration and learn and get techniques. Like, oh, like they put their table from the left side first because it makes it more easier to do it that way, or like it makes certain things more efficient. Take that knowledge and then apply it to your own table, right? Like don't just kind of be like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, it's done, right? Like it's gonna be a lot harder once you actually go through it yourself, right? That's why, like, you know, when you people open up the manual to like build something, they're like, holy crap, this
Right.
is actually a
Like
lot
for
harder
IKEA.
than yeah, exactly, right? Like exactly.
Mhm.
They'll just give you the tools and you have to figure it out on your own. So it's likewise, like you have to figure out number one, like what do you want to build? And then once you, because you already have all the tools, you just could build whatever the hell you want. Like you could build a table, you could build a chair, like the screwdriver, the hammer, all of those things are just languages and tool sets that you know, but you could really build anything, but just try to build with a purpose.
Okay. So I hope everyone got that. Build with a purpose and build with some intention. You won't get better, if you don't practice. I guess with building, and when someone builds a certain application with the tools that they have, with whatever language they're working on, when they come across certain problems, you give yourself a time limit to kind of go through your bugs or certain technical issues. I know when I first started in my journey um, last year, I could spend more than enough time that I could want to vocalize here. But now I'm just like, maybe I should give myself like a time limit. So,
Hmm.
what would be that time limit for you to, immerse yourself in a problem? And when do you ask for help?
I'm a pretty bad person to ask about this because I will spend
Okay.
like long, exorbitant hours trying to figure something out. And it's a little unhealthy, but I also describe it as like coding as like a never ending Rubik's Cube. So sometimes you'll just have to go down this crazy rabbit hole to try to figure something out. And in some regards, like as an engineer, you kind of have to do those hours, right? But I would say generally, if it takes longer than a day, that's when I start reaching out to people, especially on my team, because if I commit like 6 hours into trying to figure out what the heck is going on, that's a really long time for me, and it's obviously not super clear what is going on. But I would suggest anyone that is asking for help kind of kind of phrase it in a way that you show that you've actually put in the work to figure out why, or like, well, let me rephrase this. Try to phrase it in a way to show the other person that you actually put an effort to figure it out, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you just say, I don't know how to do this, they're going to be like, okay, like, did you actually try? Or are you just coming to me because you, immediately when you didn't know, you asked for help? So I would come in with the approach of saying like, hey, I did this and I expected this, but it's not working this way. So I also tried this and to expect this, but it didn't go this way. Then I even tried this. Like, you just could show the laundry list of things you tried. And then I always end it with, are you able to see something that I can't see? Like, is there something that you see that I can't see? And then that kind of stirs up a conversation rather than one person just solving it for the other, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with that because as I've learned with getting to know you, Shashi, Mike, that you guys have developed a certain kind of lens in solving problems that junior devs don't necessarily have just yet. And that doesn't mean that eventually with time we'll get there, but that's that's the key in time.
Yeah, and I think it's just about effort, right? Like show the experienced developer that you put some effort into trying to figure it out. And more often than not, people are always willing to help, but it's one of those things where you don't want that other senior developer or mid-level developer to feel like they're just a sounding board of like it's kind of like that giving tree, right? And I talked to actually Quincy Larson about the giving tree, but the giving tree, eventually the wood runs out. And then if
Right.
anything, their
Mm-hmm.
patience can run out too as well. So you want to make it in a way where it's like the giving tree, but then you give back something, right? So they don't run out of
Mm-hmm.
energy, right? So I think that's just kind of what my original point was, is like try not to be just a taker, but just maybe also like having that conversation where it's like that person isn't giving you their tree or their wood, they're just talking to you. And then maybe next time it's just like you give them something, it's like it should be like a back and forth conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I guess with that, if junior developers ask senior developers some help, how can they be of value to seniors since they're all just kind of starting out?
Yeah, I think being able to build trust is really important between a senior and a junior. And if anything, like more often than not, I think that's just going to happen with time as you get more and more used to the code base. So eventually there's going to be a certain point where, a senior might just ask like, hey, like, can you work on this feature? And if you're able to deliver, maybe you're still going to ask questions at the end of the day, I'm sure, but maybe you're going to ask less questions, or like how you phrase your questions, like what I was kind of alluding to before, that is not necessarily a one-way relationship. It's a conversation again. So like you build trust through conversation and not through like, hi, can I get some help? Hi, can I get some help? Hi, like that means like I can't trust you, because it's basically say you don't know how to solve things, right? But if it's like,
Right.
hey, can we talk about this, because I've tried it this way, but it's not working. I'd be like, oh, cool. Like that's how you build trust, right? It's like, don't make it a one-way relationship, make it like an actual conversation. And eventually, like things will grow, and then you'll learn, and then you'll just start doing stuff on your own, right? And then maybe even contributing to like documentation and stuff like that, because devs are horrible with documentation. That could be something that
Right.
could build trust as well.
Yeah, those are all good points. You mentioned uh, a code base. I don't see a lot of talk amongst junior devs about Git and GitHub. I know we talked about tools like JavaScript, Python, frameworks, etc. Do you have any advice for junior developers trying to break into tech um, on utilizing GitHub? Do we all really need green squares all throughout? What's your blunt approach on that?
I don't think green squares are that important, but I'd be curious about your experience. How has Git and GitHub changed for you after doing a hackathon?
Oh my goodness. So sorry. This is about you, but since you asked, from working with a team through Past Light Hackathon, I realized how valuable Git and GitHub really is. And I was really lucky to have amazing teammates with Steve, who's great at GitHub, and he said your course really also helped him. And now every time people want to collaborate with me, I just want to first ask, like, do you know Git or GitHub? Because how can we start on this project before collaborating with one another? Or do you want to learn together, Git and GitHub? Because it's such an easy way to collaborate. And obviously, it's another novel system to learn, but with time and practice, it gets easier, just like I guess everything else. But yeah,
That's
after the
the
hackathon,
secret sauce. I mean, that's the secret sauce of why Git and GitHub is important, because in isolation, it doesn't really make much sense. It feels like you're just like pressing file and save, but it's until you start working with other people do you realize why it's so important. And at the end of the day, when you get hired, you're going to be working with other software engineers. So I think Git and GitHub is really important, but to replicate it is not always super easy to do, because unless you're doing like a hackathon, or you just form this like scrappy group together to just say, hey, we're going to use this to build something together, like it's not super easy to just like do it. And at this, like, you could learn JavaScript by doing, you could do Python by doing, and all this stuff, but until you actually do Git and GitHub, it's like it doesn't make sense unless you're like going through the struggle of rebasing or trying to do merge conflicts and all of that stuff. And that's why I think it's really important to try to get that replication as much as possible. And that's why I really like the approach that you did. And that's why even with my portfolio course, I did it by myself, but I was trying to like explain it in a way where it's like, hey, if I was working on this, I will put a pull request here, and then someone approves and someone merges. Like that's why it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, guys. So please try to, when you have time, take the time to learn Git and GitHub, this really valuable tool as junior and senior devs. So I
We
know we're
still
running out
use
of
it.
time. Yes, exactly. I know we have a few more minutes left, so just some fun questions, I guess, from this is from
Yeah.
Kat on Twitter. If you were a color, what would you be?
Color. Um, Dang. I was gonna. My favorite color is green or blue, but
Okay.
maybe it's green, but maybe it's because that I'm always on the go. Like I don't like
All
seeing
right.
red.
This is a good one. This is a very
Yeah.
good one. And then I know you're a big fan of Korean barbecue. Do you have any Korean barbecue spots you could recommend in LA or New York?
Well, in New York, I'm a big fan of this place called Gangodong. It's KHD. I think there's one in LA too, and Irvine. And all three places I've been to have been pretty good. So that's definitely one. And then anotro place in New York is called Chongro. Yeah, those two are my favorite spots.
Yeah. Do you have it with rice paper?
Oh, that is such a shame. New York doesn't have rice paper, and I still don't understand
No.
why. But in California, always with rice
Yes.
paper. You cannot have it without rice paper. I'm so sad. Yeah.
Exactly. Rice paper is key. I'll just send anyone who watches Alex's portfolio course, please send him some rice paper.
Please, please. I'll take that as payment instead.
Yeah. um anyway, any other last words, Alex, that you'd like to give say to the community?
uh, I'm just really impressed by so many people winning this past few months. Mia, yourself included, and there's a few
Oh,
people in
thanks.
the Twitch chat like Alyss. It's just crazy to me because I could have sworn like 3 months ago, you guys were just figuring things out. Like, wasn't sure if you wanted to be software engineers. Like, is this really for me? My like, I don't know if I really want to do it. And I think that even Jess got a position as well. But it's just so I'm so happy to see other people winning because that's what really gives me energy to do what I do. And at the end of the day, like no matter what type of like tips and tricks I give, like I think ultimately what's the most important thing is that you guys are just doing the work, right? You guys are coding, you guys are just putting in a lot of effort to work on your projects and reaching out to people. And I think that's what I really want to emphasize newer developers is like try to not get distracted by all the other stuff and also like try to revolve around the code first and then expand outward. Yeah.
All right, guys, that's TechRally for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for your time and have a good day.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.